Oh, Seigneur Dieu, éternel, comment est devenu ce pays? Dieu viens nous en aide. Éternel, sauve le Cameroun.
Quelle est votre solution?
Le problème des crises anglophones au grand remède.
Le dialogue?
Non. On va dialoguer avec qui? Dites-moi, qui est leur leader? Il faut quand même des forces en présence. Si on se rend au sud-ouest ou au nord-ouest sur le théâtre des opérations, comme on dit.
Liberation greetings to all and sundry. Good afternoon to our comrades who are in Eastern Time, who are in Central Time. Good evening to our comrades on Ground Zero, Ground One, Ground Two, and in other parts where it's already night. I know it's exactly 10 minutes after 9 p.m. Amber time. Today is Saturday, is Sunday, I beg your pardon, May 7, 2023. My name is Comrade John Akuro. I want to thank all of you who have kept to this very important rendezvous, and you are here right now for this very important show. And I said it, as I did promise, today we are talking referendum. There are a lot of things we need to know about the need to hold a referendum in Ambazonia. Will there be a referendum? Will there not be a referendum? Should we support the call for a referendum or should we not? If there's going to be a referendum, what exactly needs to be done for us to attain that objective? What route will lead to a referendum? This and more are the issues that we are going to be discussing on this live broadcast today. So if you're just joining, go ahead, hit the share button, share as much as possible so that we can get into the beef of our discussion today. So I'll take a very little break, very short break, and then we return and begin, some side issues just before we get into the real menu of the day. Let's have fun again with our mothers. Yes, so as I said a while ago, we are going to be talking referendum today. Mainly referendum, and I'll actually be getting some of your reactions in real time. And I will not mind addressing some of the issues as we go. So let me begin by acknowledging Comrade Spen Do. You are greeting from the United Arab Emirates. You're welcome to this show. Godi, of course, I'm in for a referendum, and it is short and short. I'll get you very well, we'll get to that. G. Pastor says that's a bad idea. Okay, Francophones have flooded southern Cameroon and will vote in favor of La République du Cameroon. And Mr. Dina Peter, I acknowledge you. You say a referendum is a kind of election, and anything elections as far as Cameroon is concerned is a no-go zone. Of course, Fredo, you say hi. So, listen, we are going to delve into this. Like I said, this is a very important and a very sensitive subject matter. Don't hesitate to hit the share button and share the link as much as possible so that by the time we get to the real issue, which is this talk of referendum, we should have as many people as possible in here to get this information I'm about to share with us here today. It is fundamental in our determination as to which direction we take in prosecuting this liberation movement. There are a lot of choices that we will make. Those choices will determine whether we are successful in, passing over a free homeland to generations of Southern Cameroonians to come, or we will pass over this battle to the next generation. But my guess is all of us right now are more concerned about ensuring that we see this free homeland, that we see it before going. That is why everyone is engaged. That is why we should be putting in our all. And that is also why on sensitive issues like this particular one, the issue on referendum, we should leave sentiments aside. We should face the facts. We should look at what worked elsewhere, what did not work elsewhere, and determine what course of action to take. That is the benefit that you get when you find yourself coming in an issue after others who have been there before you. So therefore, my people of Ambazonia, I like to take a brief stop over in La République du Cameroun, where we have quite interesting things happening there. Today, people got up to see that part of the wall of the so-called Konongi maximum security prison in Yaoundé had crashed. And you see what is happening here. Some people will just look at it as normal, but it's a symbol. Very symbolical because it demonstrates the total collapse of a system that has only been in place with a single objective, that of perpetuating itself in power, and number two, that of holding the people of Ambazonia hostage for 60 good years. You see that during the French Revolution, I think it was Danton, yes, who joked when he was being led to the guillotine. And he said to Robespierre, infamous Robespierre, you will also follow me to the guillotine. But there's someone that was being hanged in France, and he said nothing well done in France, not even hanging. So when you look at La République du Cameroun, there is nothing they're able to do well. Not even be able to secure the environment where they are keeping their captives, the people that they think should be tortured, should be mesmerized, should be brought to a level where they are crawling on their stomachs and begging them. This shows you the entire collapse of a system that has only survived this far on divide and rule, on bribery and corruption, on total anarchy, on serious torture, intimidation, and enforced disappearances. That's why nothing is done well in that country. Not even securing the place where they are keeping all those that they consider could be a threat to their ability to continue to stay in power or their ability to continue to maintain themselves in Ambazonia. Take a look at this again.
Carrément tombé. Voilà ça. Carrément tombé.
Very pathetic, that really was. But that is La République du Cameroun for us. That is La République du Cameroun, the rare country where some in our midst continue to think that it could make some sense for us to stay with them. I was on this
C'est carrément tombé.
particular image,
Carrément tombé.
just so we see,
Voilà ça. Carrément tombé.
just so we see the extent of the damage by my people of Ambazonia. I don't want to take a lot of our time on La République du Cameroon because it's a piece of rotten potato. And so therefore, without taking a lot of time, I see we're already 72 up here. I guess we should just move straight into the beef of our discussion for today. Now, let us talk referendum. I see Comrade Dinga Peter talk about referendum is a kind of election. And anything elections as far as Cameroon is concerned is a no-go zone. Now, how do parties involved in a conflict find themselves at the level where there is a consultation in one of the territories? This is a fundamental question we should ask ourselves. Before I get really into explaining my thoughts, my position on this issue of referendum, I'd like us to have a bit of background knowledge. You will notice that when the people of the southern Cameroons got into the kind of arrangement, the kind of ancestral arrangement that we got into, the kind of come we stay arrangement that we got into La République du Cameroon in 1961, La République du Cameroon skillfully avoided what would have led to a serious negotiation that will end up with a treaty of union. This is because in the minds of the government of La République du Cameroon, under Ahidjo at the time, and of course their backers, the French government, and their enablers, the British Crown, it was clear that what was starting was a process of assimilation, a process by which gradually the southern Cameroons would disappear from the map of the world. Number two, gradually the people of the southern Cameroons will be given a totally new culture, that is a French culture, and then gradually the people of the southern Cameroons will be forced to mix seriously in the Republic of Cameroon, the kind of crossbreeding that at some point will become very complicated to even establish that there was a group of people, or that there were a people known as Southern Cameroonians. And so therefore there was a strategy and a plan put in place to see how to attain that objective gradually, but without causing the people of the Southern Cameroon to suspect that any such thing was in place. And of course, they did two things. Like people in Cameroon made sure they were ready to use force at any time there was need to, and number two, make sure they were ready to use a process that made us feel that we were rather getting better conditions than we would be if we were just left to be in the system the way it was supposed to be. And that is why the mention of the article, that's Article 47 sub B, or is it sub A sub B, in the federal constitution, that the federal nature of the state will be inviolate, was simply window dressing, because when they decided to kick it out in 1972, there was no forethought, no pre-thought. That is why gradually, as the Republic of Cameroon, that's La République du Cameroon, ensured that they took away from the southern Cameroons anything that would make us continue to think or dream of autonomy. We had to therefore find ourselves totally dependent on La République du Cameroon for everything, such that we will never be able to think that we were able, or that we had once done these things for ourselves and by ourselves. You notice therefore that they had to move the headquarters of the National Produce Marketing Board from the southern Cameroons to La République du Cameroon in Douala. They had to, make sure that the Yoke power plant and all of those things, ensure that's power camp. That power camp was simply shut down, and then we became dependent on Sonel. They had to make sure that the head office of Cameroon Bank was carried to La République du Cameroon and everything managed from there. They had to make sure that the police force was brought into the union by the southern Cameroons. by the former UN trust territory of British Southern Cameroons. But like British Cameroon made sure that they captured all of this. I mean, the headquarters and everything, and the running of that police force found its way into their hands. So like British Cameroon made sure they dismantled the Southern Cameroons gradually emptied it of all its power onto the point where after Joa, the next Prime Minister of the Southern Cameroons was actually appointed by Mr. Amadou Ahidjo. That is how it was going, bit by bit. So when in 1972, they decided to hatch the next one, they brought the argument that the federation was too expensive to run and will become so tightly knit, and then the issue of laissez-passer, which was kept in place deliberately, that it was making it so difficult for people to move from one part of the country to the other one. I mean, the United States of America, which is a federal state, but in the United States of America, if you are moving from Texas to Florida, you are moving from Florida to New York, to wherever, you have no paper to show to anybody or to justify why you are moving from one part of the federation to the next one. But in the case of the British Southern Cameroons, unlike the British Cameroon, where one was known as West Cameroon and the other was known as East Cameroon, there were checkpoints. You had to obtain laissez-passer to move from one side of the country to the other. And that was deliberate, because at some point they will present all of this as obstacles to people's free movement, and they needed to do something about it. That was the justification that they brought for the 1972 referendum. And now when they bring the 1972 referendum, it is organized by La République du Cameroun with the intention of saying, let us change the form of the state. And the claim of organizing a referendum was because they wanted to go around that article in the federal constitution that said the federal nature of the state was inviolate. And therefore, when they decide to organize a referendum, the referendum is not only in the Southern Cameroons. That was the party that decided to join with La République du Cameroun. The referendum was not a consultation of the entire country. Of course, that meant the result was known in advance. I don't want to go into the nitty-gritties of the we and the yes. But what I want to point out here, therefore, was the gradual process by which La République du Cameroun was determined to get us where we are today. And so here we are finally today, where in 1972, a fake referendum was organized and the federation abolished. We find ourselves in a country known as the United Republic of Cameroon. And so, what did they do? They went on now to pieces the country. And that's why you now had what they call the Northwest and what you had the Southwest, each of them standing on their own as administrative unit. The next stage in ensuring that we gradually forget that we're even one people, gradually forget that we as a people could someday stand back to say, no, perhaps we're tired of this union, we want to leave it on one self-determination. They had to do everything to place a wedge between the Northwest and the Southwest. I'm calling it as it were, between the Northwest and the Southwest, ensuring effectively that there was little or absolutely no communication between these two parts of the country. That's why to leave from Bamenda to Boya, you had to pass through La République du Cameroun. I could travel for an entire day to leave from Boya, which is in the southwest, that's in southern Cameroon, to Bamenda, which is in southern Cameroon. But before 1961, the roads were passable. We had caterpillars at the PWD that were used in maintaining the roads, making sure that they were passable all seasons. But so by taking away that equipment, making programming of road maintenance complicated and difficult, these roads were clearly made impassable. So therefore, we had to strain a lot to move with each other, and so it became fashionable for the people of the Northwest to become closer to the people of the West. The Bamilikes, so the people of the West and the people of the West had a closer culture, and fashionable for the people of the South to become closer to those of the littoral. Oh, the people of the North, they were Sawas, and they tried therefore to push that mix. It was deliberate. And you need to know, therefore, that if not for the fact that there's been a lot of agitation way back from 1993, when you had the AAC, the All Anglophone Conference. If you didn't have all of that agitation, even dating back from 1984 or that's 1985, when Mr. Paul Biya decided to unilaterally change the name of the country, leading from Goji Dinka to push to that point where he sued the government of Cameroon for secession and obtained, a favorable judgment at the Bamenda High Court to go ahead and reinstate the state of the Southern Cameroon and rename it Ambazonia. But for all those agitations, the plans that Republic of Cameroon had were even clearer. They had to get to that place where they start cutting our territory and merging our territory administratively, even with those of La République du Cameroon. So all this was in preparation to ensure that that day, this day today, when we are giving them headache, that we are tired of this union and we are determined to leave, will be difficult to come. And if it comes, we should face a lot of difficulties working around it. That's why you hear them today. For those who still believe that La République du Cameroun can believe or count on anything, you hear them say, Le Cameroun a fait son histoire. That's what they say on a daily basis. Le Cameroun a déjà fait son histoire. That they have already gone from being the Republic of Cameroon through the Federal Republic of Cameroon, when they go bigger, and then through the United Republic of Cameroon, and then completely annexed Ambazonia to return to the Republic of Cameroon. La République du Cameroun a fait son histoire. They don't think ever of going back. No one thinks of going back after you have successfully attained an objective you had wished to attain. That will be considered to La République du Cameroon like catching its fish and going back to wash it in water. They are certain that they will escape. So therefore, don't forget that during the times of agitation, a lot of the time, right from the 1993 Tripartite Conference, there were a lot of calls for a return to the federal system. And the response from La République was rather a threat. You recall what Joseph Owona said at the time, that if the people of the Southern Cameroon continue to insist on a return to the federal system, the Beti people will secede and form a Beti state consisting of the East, the Center, and the South. Don't forget that during this time, the people of the Southern Cameroon even already mentioned the need for a referendum to be organized, for the people to be consulted as to what they wanted, whether they needed to return to the federal system. That was the point at the time. But then it did not move until we got to 1994, where there was the AAC2. And of course, you know how we finally got to the creation of the Southern Cameroon's National Council. The SCNC had even organized a signature petition a couple of times where over 1 million people participated. But the people of the Southern Cameroon to express their opinions. None of us have forgotten the several trips to the United Nations involving the former prime ministers of Southern Cameroon, that is John Bufancha, and the former prime minister of West Cameroon, Muna Solomon, Muna. You notice with all those trips, all they were told was, go and have a dialogue. Because La République du Cameroon at this point in time has gone to the point where they have literally established in the minds of the world that they are in charge of our territory and that our territory is part of their country. For that reason, therefore, for any such thing to happen on our territory, they will need to be consulted. I want to ask the point to the plebiscite of February 11, 1961, but fail to say that the agreements that had to come in place after the UN independence vote on the Southern Cameroons on the 21st of April 1961, nothing ever moved to the point of the signing of a treaty of union. So therefore, my people of Ambazonia, I'm taking all of this, bringing this whole background. So we try to understand why La République du Cameroon for a long time made sure that in our major cities, towns and villages, they appointed mainly French-speaking, mainly Francophones, citizens of the Republic of Cameroon to our villages. It was not by error. You notice, I know it will take quite a while for any of you to recall the last time a Southern Cameroonian was appointed, say for example, SDO in Fako. Oh yes, can you recall the last time? SDO in Meme, even SDO in Meza. They moved at some point past very briefly through Tado Robertson. But, trust me, forever, they have made sure that they are citizens of La République that are governing the major embassies of our areas. Even in almost all our villages, the commandant de brigade, the commissaire de police, the prisons administrators, most of them were citizens of La République du Cameroon. And the intention has always been clear, to make sure that they try to take total control of our land. They are in control everywhere in such a way that it is difficult for us, or it will be difficult for us to couch anything, to plan anything and go away with it. So now, those who are in charge of ensuring the smooth operation of life in our various communities today are citizens of La République du Cameroon. In Manfin, the SDO is a Betiman. In Bamenda, the SDO is somebody from the Bassa area, one more in me. In Victoria, the SDO is from the center, south regions. In Kumba, the SDO is a Tuundong, of course, you know where he comes from. He comes from somewhere in the center towards the east. So you look at, I've mentioned just a few places, but go across the board, even in Menchum, even in Momo, I mean all over the place as I speak. They are the ones in charge. The reason is simple. Because La République is looking at that position where they hem us down forever, to the point where if you ever say today that you're organizing a referendum today in Ambazonia, who is going to conduct it? Who's going to conduct it? Of course, look around you completely in Ambazonia today. Since this phase of our liberation movement started in 2016, right up to this moment in 2023, now I'm speaking in May of 2023, we have not sent La République du Cameroon out of any one of our counties completely. No, we haven't. We haven't. Yes, we have made the land ungovernable. We have internationalized our liberation movement. We have made it difficult for La République du Cameroon to penetrate places that they used to penetrate very easily, and all of those things. We are making the cost of occupation so great for La République du Cameroon on a daily basis. Oh, Mr. Paul Bia's Bulu talks are falling in Ambazonia on a daily basis and in good numbers. They are putting it at about 1,400 plus, but of course note that the real figure is well over 2,000. Mr. Bia is not worried. He's ready to lose even 15 to 20,000 of his soldiers in Ambazonia, provided he maintains the control of Ambazonia under La République du Cameroon. This is something that should be clear in our minds. And so therefore, talks about a referendum, of course, they are not strange. Because before us, a lot of the newest countries in the world that were locked in battles with other hegemons, with other local colonial powers, colonial countries, or colonial administrations, like that of La République Cameroon in our land, most of those countries ended at referendums. But how did they get to those referendums? How did they get to the results that they got? That is what we should be looking at. That is what should inform us on whether the trajectory that we are taking is the correct one, or we are making a mistake in our approach. Make no mistake, and trust me on this, right from day one, even in 2017, of course, at the concert we already discussed, we knew that there will come a moment where there will be a referendum. But what is that moment when we will need a referendum? How do we function to get to that point of getting that referendum? so that you have the result that will reflect the true will of the people. That is the issue that is at stake here right now. And so I'll take this little break and then we'll do a case-by-case analysis of other situations before ours. Let's relax. Thank you for that little moment of relaxation right back here. And so therefore, I'd like us to begin looking at this. My people of Ambazonia, let's see what happened with this is the referendum in Eritrea. The Eritreans held a referendum, or a referendum was held on the territory of Eritrea on May 24, 1993. You all know that Eritrea and Ethiopia were locked in a serious war for over 2 decades, for over 20 years. And you know, this war got to a point where the Eritreans were successful in pushing the Ethiopians out of a lot of areas on their territory, to the point where the Eritreans were generally in control of their territory at some points, although Ethiopia still had some presence and was still leading onslaughts, at least from the Ethiopian territory. And so therefore, when the Ethiopians and the Eritreans had attained what I call a mutual hurting stalemate, the Ethiopians realized that by war and war alone, they were not going to be able to keep the Eritreans under their control. And therefore, there were a series of peace meetings, peace agreements, a series of negotiations that ended with an agreement by both sides that there should be a referendum. And you see, this referendum that took place in Eritrea was because when the Ethiopians were finding it difficult to defeat the Eritreans militarily and understood that they would never be able to, and it was going to be age-long, they came up with that notion that the people who were making it difficult for the Eritreans to continue to live in peace under Ethiopia were the armed groups. And therefore, they felt that the opinions of the civilian population needed to be sought so that they know where the people stand. And the question at the referendum was whether Eritreans would like to stay with Ethiopia, under some kind of autonomous arrangement under Ethiopia, which means they were actually getting towards that kind of federalist proposal. So Eritrea, you stay as an entire, you are on your own and everything, but we have those kind of federalist links, or outright independence. Of course, that referendum had a UN team of observers monitoring it. This referendum was organized in Eritrea by the people of Eritrea, by the provisional administration that was in Eritrea. And Eritreans were all in their territory. You did not have a lot of Ethiopians in Eritrean territory. You did not have Ethiopians as, the key administrators holding all the big offices in Eritrea. So that referendum was not organized by the United Nations. No, it was not. The Ethiopians stood aside and definitely had an observer mission too. But the United Nations provided a team of observers to monitor the the referendum on independence in Eritrea. And of course, that produced the result that it produced. The people of Eritrea were able to obtain the result that they obtained, 99% for independence and less than 1% for some form of autonomy under Ethiopia, because the Eritreans were in control of their territory. Because the Eritreans organized this election, supervised by a UN team of monitors, and of course with other independent monitors from other international organizations, including the Norwegian Relief Organization or Relief Agency. So therefore, the people of Ethiopia did not have the means anyhow to influence either the conduct or the outcome of the vote. This is about Eritrea. I like us to understand this perfectly, because this will inform us on exactly the direction that we take when we are leading this campaign for the holding of a referendum. We will understand what we need to do before we get to that. And now, let me get to East Timor. You see, in 1999, an independence referendum was held in East Timor, and that was on August 30, 1999. The referendum's origin lay with the request made by the president of Indonesia. That's the then president of Indonesia, B.J. Habibie. He made a request to the then UN Secretary General Kofi Annan on 27 January 1999 for the United Nations to hold a referendum whereby the Indonesian province, they were still calling it then an Indonesian province, East Timor, whereby the Indonesian province will be given the choice of either greater autonomy within Indonesia or independence. Now, look at this one. Study this particular case. With the case of East Timor and Indonesia, Eritreans, I beg your pardon, the East Timorians made the cost of occupation unbearable. The East Timorians rendered the entire place ungovernable. The East Timorians internationalized their liberation movement. The East Timorians carried forth a kind of resistance that made it difficult for the Indonesian puppets to be there and controlling life in East Timor. And so it got to the point, therefore, where it was the government of Indonesia. Listen carefully. The government of Indonesia, because you see the reference here is made to, will be given choice of either greater autonomy within Indonesia or independence. That's whereby the Indonesian province, we refer to East Timor as the Indonesian province. How are they referring to us today? The English-speaking regions of Cameroon. Sounds familiar? That is how La République du Cameroon and all its, its friends on the international scene refer to us. I recall in the company of late veteran journalist Fofwani Paul Nkemayan, publisher of The Star newspaper. We were in the presence of the British High Commissioner when La République du Cameroon hosted the British Interparliamentary Conference. And Mr. Paul Biya came to address the Commonwealth parliamentarians in French from start to finish. We were angry, we were frustrated, and we were in this exchange, therefore, one-on-one with the British High Commissioner. And I asked him, because I was then the Secretary General of the Commonwealth of the Commonwealth Journalists Association, CJA Cameroon branch, and Chief Foye Nkemayan Paul was the president. At the same time, I was the president of the Cameroon Anglophone Newspaper Publishers Association, CANPA. So we were worried and were asking these questions. And the British diplomat did not mince his words in his response. He said, as far as Britain is concerned, as far as the United Kingdom is concerned, Cameroon was a French-speaking country, and Mr. Paul Biya was free to express himself in whatever language he cared, and reminded us that French-speaking countries were becoming members of the Commonwealth of Nations. And so I'm saying this so that we know that therefore this is the mentality that they have. They consider Southern Cameroons as being the English-speaking regions of Cameroon. So will anyone come inside there in Southern Cameroon to organize a referendum without the approval of La République du Cameroon, without the consent and agreement of La République du Cameroon? If you are thinking that way, begin to undeceive yourself. Just begin to undeceive yourself as fast as possible. That is why you hear Mr. Tibonagi tell us, stop disturbing the ears of the world with the history of what happened in 1961. We have a reality before us today. Let's face that reality. So in other words, he's saying the reality before us today is that La République du Cameroon's administration is in our territory, and that La République du Cameroon is claiming our territory as theirs, and if we want to get La République du Cameroon out of our territory, we had better gone to work. Do what we're supposed to do. Stop quarreling among ourselves. Stop creating new organizations every day. Stop splintering our groups. Stop, making it difficult for us to fundraise to do the thing that we have to do. That is what he meant. They can open the microphones of CNN to us. We see the history of how La République du Cameroon marched into our territory in 1961 from Monday to Monday. Go do it on BBC, do it on Fox News, it will not change anything as long as La République du Cameroon firmly has its administration on our territory. If we don't learn, if we don't grow to understand the hard work that we have to do, we sit there and we are convincing ourselves that we'll just get to one morning and shout, referendum, referendum, referendum. Internationally organized by who? How? They'll just come into the Republic of Cameroon and say, shift here. We are passing to Ambazonians to go and organize a referendum. We're taking the lazy man's approach. The hard work is before us. We will get to a referendum. But if we want a referendum that produces the results, that will reflect the true feelings and imaginations of our people, then we have to do our homework. And the homework we have to do is push La République du Cameroon out of our territory. Is give La République du Cameroon nose bleeding on our territory to the point where La République du Cameroon behaves like the government of Indonesia. Calls on the United Nations and say, please come organize a referendum there, because the elite, the so-called elite, keep telling me that the majority of the people want to be part of La République du Cameroon, while some few misguided ones in quote abroad, and then some brainwashed ones in the bushes are disturbing the peace. Come and organize a referendum in that area so that we know the true will of the people. That is when that kind of thing will happen. But where we are standing now, that one is a pipe dream. Don't kill my ears with referendum in the morning, referendum. This is what we have to start saying. I had occasion to address this when Mr. Dennis Aminke came to my platform to talk about this, and we explored all these questions. Because you ask yourself today, if a referendum is taking place on our territory, who will organize it? Who will run it? How will you prepare the grounds for the elections? Where will you, those you and I who are abroad, who need to campaign, who need to educate our people, how will we pass to enter there? This is something we need to know. And if you organize a referendum in this kind of situation, where you have citizens of the Republic full in our territory, where you have the entire administration manned by them, when you have the entire army of occupation, we won't get there. But if we get La République du Cameroon back to the wall, to that place where they become the ones asking for that referendum, and asking the United Nations or any international body to organize this referendum, of course, La République du Cameroon will be forced. They will ask them to withdraw to their territory. Why something is done, and I'm coming to that because there is an example where that happened. So therefore, we have seen with the East Timorian example that it was the government of Indonesia through its president, BJ Habibie, that the request was made for a referendum to be held. They were tired, weary, weakened, exhausted with war, and so they wanted a return to peace. They said, okay, let's talk to the people. If the people agree, then every other person will be ready to agree. But then, it was not the people of East Timor who initiated and said, okay, the main approach that we need to get to ensuring our freedom is now we need a referendum. Indonesia, come give us a referendum. It did not go that way. It did not. It did not. Let's move to another example. I want to go to South Sudan. And of course, here we are in South Sudan. A referendum was organized in South Sudan in 2011. Now, the referendum in South Sudan took place from January 9 to 15, 2011. But how did the South Sudanese get to a referendum? They got to a referendum as part, because you read on that document I have there, the referendum was one of the consequences of the 2005 Navaisha agreement between the Khartoum central government and the Sudanese People's Liberation Army or movement, the SPLAM. Did you hear that? It was part of agreement. Look at, although you hear they say the Navaisha, another name for it is the CPA, the Comprehensive Peace Agreement. And the comprehensive, say comprehensive because there were a series of agreements signed here and there that were put together, joined together, and the former was known as the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, the CPA, between the central government in Khartoum and the Sudanese People's Liberation Army. Because why? It was already evident to the government of Sudan that staying in South Sudan was going to become too complicated. It was getting too costly. They were unable to meet up with the cost of occupation. The casualties were counting. So they had attained what I called before the mutual hurting stalemate, and there was need for a solution. But now with the case of South Sudan, during the peace talks, I say peace talks because you must hear this. So there were negotiations, peace talks and everything within the framework of which, that's part of the agreement, was the organization of a referendum. But now how did it go here? The agreements were in 2005. The referendum was not held in 2005, nor in 2006. It was held in 2011. There was a 6-year gap. During this 6-year gap, it was agreed that the people of South Sudan would enjoy self-rule from 2005 right up to 2011 from the central government in Sudan. So they were like almost in a kind of federalist system. So the people of South Sudan had a lot of autonomy over their own affairs. And the belief of the international powers, the United Nations monitors and others, was that during these 6 years of the South Sudanese governing themselves without much interference from the central government in Khartoum and all of that, they would become accustomed to operating in that way and could vote at the referendum in 2011 to stay under Sudan with the autonomy they had achieved. That's to stay and be self-governing within the framework, say, of a federal system with Sudan. But finally, when that referendum was organized in 2011, of course, there were a lot of international monitors, including the United Nations, It was not organized by the United Nations in this case. The one in East Timor was organized by the United Nations at the behest of the government of Indonesia. The one in Eritrea was organized by the Eritreans, monitored by the United Nations. The one in South Sudan was organized by the people of South Sudan with international monitors to ensure that the vote was properly conducted. The Sudanese too observed to ensure that the vote was properly conducted. At the end of the day, despite those 6 years of a goody-goody staying together between the people of Sudan and those of South Sudan, the people of Sudan still felt that it made sense for them to be independent. And that's why during that referendum, a majority of the people of South Sudan still voted for total independence. My people of Ambazonia. I'm bringing all these examples so that we see how it happened. You notice therefore that with the case of South Sudan, the referendum was part of the comprehensive peace agreement. We have to squeeze La République du Cameroon to the point where they are dragged to the negotiations table. And therefore, talks of a referendum could become part of the peace deal that is negotiated. At that point, we will have the opportunity to discuss the modalities of that referendum, to discuss the logistics, to agree on everything related to that referendum. Not that you sit and get to and say, now it's time for a referendum, like we want a referendum, like we say, it's okay, I'm coming to organize a referendum in Ambazonia. You don't stand any chance of influencing how this election is conducted. My people of Ambazonia, let me make clear here, a good majority of our population know that we will end up at a referendum. But who will organize that referendum? How the referendum will be organized? The circumstances under which that referendum will be organized is where I see some tiny divergence by some people who are really getting fatigued. Because if you want to take basically this approach, you are giving the impression to La République du Cameroon that we did with the Swiss initiative that we are fatigued, we are tired. And so La République du Cameroon will tell itself, like I said in my outing 2 days ago, that they need to push on with the approach of the usage of time, the gradual erosion of support. That's what La République du Cameroon will count on. My people of Ambazonia, when the people of Germany, under what was known at the time as Prussia, and the leader, the chancellor at the time, was Otto von Bismarck, when they felt it made sense to bring all the German territories together in what became known as the German unification, they recognized that freedom is not free. That freedom is never handed to anybody on a platter of gold. They recognize that to attain freedom, you work, you fight hard, you work for it. So that is why when Bismarck brought on board von Roon and von Moltke, and the South Department said, they made clear that the quest to unify all the German states will not be determined by the speeches and resolutions of the majority. It will be by blood and iron. I'm quoting. It will be by blood and iron. I am quoting history. You can go check it out. The history of German unification. And you will see how systematically Bismarck, von Roon, and von Moltke put themselves together, mobilized the people, and led the onslaught gradually, weakening every power around them that was an obstacle until German unification was proclaimed. Where? in the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles, in France. That's when Alsace and Lorraine were taken back from France. Until France only recovered this after the German defeat at World War One. So what I'm trying to say here, what I'm trying to explain here, my dear people, we have to begin to push La République du Cameroun out of our territory. We have to begin to make it impossible for La République du Cameroun to breathe on our territory. We have to make La République du Cameroun know that we are not tired and we will not be tired. And trust me, we are not losing support. No. Anybody who gives you the impression that we are losing support, that person is failless. Permit me that expression. I followed Barrister Agbobala 2 days ago. I'm sure it was an old man. I followed him when he was addressing the Canadian Parliament. He said that today the majority of the people in southern Cameroon want nothing short of absolute independence. He too would agree on that, although he has been trying to sell a mirage called special status, called federalism and the likes. My people of Ambazonia, we can't let ourselves be carried away. We have to do the hard work. If Mr. Tibor Nagy is now telling us, okay, at least there's something we can all agree around, is referendum, it's another way of telling us, since you people have refused to come together, work together like a desperate people who know they are on their own, to force La République du Cameroun to vomit out the southern Cameroons, okay, then go for the beggarly approach and start knocking the doors of international powers, please go. But at the same time, the same Tibor Nagy told us, stop counting on the international community. Nobody in the international community will go and force oblige the Republic of Cameroon to come to the negotiation table. Does that make some sense? So the only way to get the Republic of Cameroon to the negotiation table is us. Is us. We have to choke La Republic of Cameroon to the point they can no longer breathe on our territory, to the point where they sue for peace. The day La Republic of Cameroon asks for international mediation for the second time, know therefore that is the time that serious business will happen. Until then, we are supposed to be doing the hard work, doing massive fundraisers, breaking the barriers between our various groups, movements, and organizations, killing the internecine wrangling among us, stop the use of social media to attack each other, and focus on what matters. And of course, when we do that, we will get La République du Cameroon scampering out of our territory. Let's take a little break and we look at the situation, at the case of Bougainville, and then we will wrap up. So we had our short break, and so upon return from our break, let me make this statement before I go to Bougainville. Christians always have one part of a mantra. And I recall when we were still in primary school, and a lot of those who were in primary school at the time, that was kind of 1980, in the early and late 80s, you recall, they always said, there was a song we sang during morning devotion. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all the things shall be added unto thee. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Sounds familiar? Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all other things will be added unto thee. In this liberation movement, what we need to do most is make life for La République du Cameroon impossible on our land. Make life for La République du Cameroon impossible on our land. Choke La République du Cameroon. Continue to intensify the cost of occupation to that point where the government of La République du Cameroon understands that the only thing I need to do is go to the negotiation table. Once you're able to drag La République du Cameroon to the negotiation table, you get a comprehensive package. The referendum you're talking about will be included. Everything will be involved. Because through the referendum, it's easier to get that international recognition. Because we know about Somaliland, which is, self-governing and everything, but they're still running after a recognition. So that is what we have to do. Let me take you to Bougainville. This is the situation in Bougainville. Bougainville is an autonomous region of the Papua New Guinea. And so, the people of Bougainville too have been fighting so hard to get their autonomy. And it got to a certain point. It got to a point where the government in Papua New Guinea came to that understanding that we can no longer hold people hostage forever. So what happened? A non-binding independence referendum was therefore held. And this non-binding independence referendum was authorized by the government of Papua New Guinea. Papua New Guinea authorized this non-binding referendum. I say non-binding because they told themselves that, okay, we are convinced that, the agitators in Bougainville and others and all of those things, they are few in number, and so therefore the people needed to be consulted so that they say what they should say. But they authorized the people of Bougainville, the autonomous people of Bougainville, to organize their own referendum, but said it was going to be non-binding. They would determine. And so that referendum took place between November 23 and December 7, 2019. And the referendum question was a choice between greater autonomy within Papua New Guinea and full independence. Voters voted overwhelmingly, 98.31% for independence. The referendum was a result of a 2001 agreement. Did you hear that? The referendum in Bougainville was a result of a 2001 agreement between the government of Papua New Guinea and the autonomous Bougainville government that ended a civil war fought from 1988 to 1998. 1988 to 1998, a civil war fought for 10 good years, at the end of which there were peace talks, peace agreements. And therefore, during these peace agreements, the holding of a referendum was one of the points in the peace deal. Do we see how it comes about? And so, therefore, they said, okay, go ahead, organize it. And so, listen, so the people of Bougainville voted, therefore, in 2019. So in July 2021, an agreement was reached between the governments of Papua New Guinea and Bougainville, in which Bougainville will gain independence by 2027 if it is ratified by the Papua New Guinea Parliament. But you see, what is here is the vote that took place in 2019 showed that 98% of the people of Papua New Guinea, of Bougainville, wanted independence, total independence. This was as a result of a peace agreement reached between the two parties, the government of Papua New Guinea and that of Bougainville, after a 10-year war, civil war. And therefore, after the vote in 2019, because the referendum was agreed to be non-binding, first it will be non-binding. When you conduct it, we will decide. Papua New Guinea will decide. So in 2021, Papua New Guinea decided, okay, we have agreed to recognize the result of your referendum. But now, let us agree that you will become independent fully independent in 2027. Today we are 2023. 4 years from today, normally Bougainville will become totally independent. Although there's a clause that if it is ratified by Papua New Guinea's parliament. But take note, Bougainville is already self-governing. They already have everything that they want to have in place. So they are even fortifying themselves the more that if Papua New Guinea, if its parliament in 2027 say no, we are not ratifying this, they have a greater artillery to go back to war and chase these people out once and for all. We haven't attained that point. Our autonomy was taken away from us. We are still fighting with the people of Latitude Cameroon in our land. There are civil servants in our land. There are teachers in our villages. There are nurses, there are doctors everywhere in our land. We need to get them out. That's what is supposed to happen. We need to get them out. That's the only way you do. You get them out, then you start talking about this kind of thing. Referendum. And you see, it was part of an agreement. So my people of Ambazonia, we have all seen for ourselves that there is a trend to attaining this objective. There is a trend to getting there. There is no quick fix. No, there is no quick fix. Let us not confuse ourselves. Let's not distract ourselves from focusing on doing the hard work of kicking Latitude Cameroon out of our territory, of choking them on our territory until they start requesting in total emergency a negotiation table, until they become the first, like the government of Indonesia, to call on the United Nations, please come and organize a referendum. We have to do that. But if we leave that objective now and we are focusing on campaigning for referendum, please, we are leaving the substance and chasing the shadow. I hope I make it very clear today where I stand. That is where we stand. So my people, I don't want to take a lot of your time. I was looking here to see if there's some questions that needed to be addressed, but I'd rather see comments. Okay? So let's not live in delusion. Let's not fool ourselves. Let's not be struggling to go for the quick fix. There is no such thing as a quick fix. Stop inundating the entire airway with referendum. It is referendum now. Referendum we want. Please understand me. I'm not against referendum. We will get there. But before we get there, there is work that we have to do. Hard work. Hard work we have to do. We can't escape from the hard ride. I want to jump into the easy run. We'll be falling into another trap by the Republic of Cameroon. Mr. Tibor Nagy is a very good friend of Ambazonia. He had lived and worked in Yaoundé and had been to our territory a lot of the time, so he knows what we are going through. That's why you notice he had chorus on Twitter a lot of the time. Please come together. Please come together. Work together. Unite. Come together so that you exploit the full potential of your diaspora. Come together. And because we kept until he got tired, he said, okay, if you people can at least come together to do the real work, then maybe come together and start trying this other option now. Maybe. But he said one thing. Ambazonia will come to pass in spite of our current divisions. You get the exasperation of someone who has tried to educate you on the virtues of synergy, of collaboration, of working together. We say no. We prefer to sabotage each other. If I call a fundraiser here, people take their phones and calling. Have you heard about it? Don't contribute there. Don't contribute there. They will not give it to you. My people of Ambazonia, we have to put together the funds, whether we like it or not. We have to come together and do what it takes to get freedom. That thing will not be determined by the speeches and resolutions of the majorities. From what you see on the ground is blood and iron. You need money to get there. Yeah, you need money to get there. Thank you for watching. I have spoken.